Hello, screenwriters and novel writers. Welcome to Writing for Screens. Today's live lesson is working on my novel, The Progress Report, number 15. My name is Glenn Gers. I am the Chief Operating Everything at Writing for Screens, which is a YouTube channel I have set out to try and bring down to simple terms the things I had to teach myself during a 25-year career writing for TV and movies. On my way out of the business, I wanted to go back to all the things I had to work out for myself, all the skills and tools and insights, and try to give them, leave them behind. For those of you who are just starting out, trying to figure this stuff out, I do not have a plan. I do not have a theory. I just have things I figured out for myself, which I really think are helpful, but every artist has to work their own way. So all I can do is offer them up to you in nice, easy to digest bits and let you figure out if it's good for you. There is no right or wrong in art. There is no right or wrong in the process of making art. You've got to figure out what works for you. All I can do is try to show you stuff I learned or things I learned about. In case they're useful to you, I wish someone had done this for me back in the 1980s and 90s. So therefore, that's what we're doing here. The channel, this is a little screen grab of the main page of the channel. And if you'll see down at the bottom, there's a bunch of thumbnails for playlists. Let me get a close-up of that. Those playlists have, the first three of them have 50 10-minute videos, just short lessons. I tried to condense down everything into short thoughts, insights, skills, tools, things you can try. Each one has a very specific topic, genre, flashbacks, character, action. Whatever it is, I've tried to give you a very clear title, and the thumbnail has the word in big, colorful letters. You can't miss it. So please do go through these. Anything I am telling you now is in these lessons. It's really, I spent months and months working on each one to try and make them useful, because I think too much stuff is just theoretical. Too many writing classes are full of rules and formulae and things that are very intellectual. I try to keep this down to stuff you can actually do. So that's what we do. Then every Wednesday, when you're not looking at those lessons are there 24/7. Okay, they're free. Please look at those. Almost every question that everyone asks me, the answer is somewhere in those lessons. But I am here every Wednesday, if I can make it, at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time Zone, taking on a different topic each week for an hour and also answering questions. This week, we're talking about my novel. Having retired from screenwriting, I am at last taking on writing a novel that I began 25 years ago. And I am finally going through it, and I try to stop every few weeks, give you a little catch up on where I am, what the process has been showing me during my work. Let's do a couple of quick hellos, and then I'll get to those thoughts. Hello, Michael and Sonia and Pelicans and Ricky and Meaning Bites. Hey, how you doing, all of you? Okay, let's talk about the novel, because this is what I've been doing. It's been about a month since I last checked in on one of these progress reports, and I've actually done a lot. Not as much as I would like, though. Isn't that always the way? Here's. Let me show you. This is my folders. I have a document called Notes. And this document called Notes is the outline and all the theoretical notes and the character thoughts and all that stuff. Let me open that up for you so you can just take a look at it. Okay, so there are work notes, which is just every day when I'm working, I'll open up just a new document, which I call Work Notes. I put the date on it, just why not? And then I talk about a particular scene, a particular problem. Like there's a scene where one of the main characters learns that someone that he was in love with years ago has opened up an art gallery, which was a big deal to her then. It's been years since he saw her. And the question is, how does he see that it exists? In the 1930s, art gallery openings were not very popular information. Anyway, the point is I asked myself questions, I went through it, and then I go into the outline. And what I had done was written a lot of little notes into the outline. So I'd spent a month or so going through the outline and trying to really analyze what is each scene about. What's happening in this scene that is the focus of the scene. And I wrote all that down. Then I've got a separate document. Let's go to the other one. It's called text, which is, unsurprisingly, the actual text of the book. And so what I've done is I wrote a very rough draft, and then I went back through the outline because the rough draft wasn't good. There were parts of the rough draft that were okay, but most of the parts, they just felt vague and undramatic, and it just wasn't working. It wasn't a novel yet. So I went through, and every scene that I had written, I would go through the outline of it and ask myself these questions. How does this happen? Why does it happen? What is the person trying to do in each scene? Having written all those notes into the outline, I now had to get all of the work into one place, because now I have the outline and I have the text. And at a certain point, you want to stop going back and forth and having stuff in all sorts of different places, lists of things to do. At a certain point, you have to say, this is the novel. If it's not in the novel, it's not good enough. You got to make sure that there is nothing that you have planned to do that you haven't actually written down in the words. So what I did was I went through each scene of the outline, and I put the outline in one window and the text in another window, and I just compared. I said, is there anything in this outline that is not yet roughly written into the text? If it wasn't there, I would write the roughest, crudest. Let's look at some really bad versions. Let's look. This one. Okay, so in this one, yeah, this is just a very brief summary of this guy being in love with this woman who's in love with another man. And so right now I've just got a page, a very, very rough page. I have things that, you can't see this. Okay. So what I got here is just a very rough page. They're going to these parties together. They tend to hang out in the evenings. It's a community of unknown artists in the 1930s in New York. They tended to socialize a lot, hang out in bars, cafeterias, and each other's art studios and apartments. And so that's the section that I'm writing here is just a description of how he is hanging out with this couple, hoping that he can find a way to break them up and get the girl. But the girl is more and more not hanging out at these parties because she does not like this scene. It's not her scene. So what I've got here is just a very brief summary. It's not there yet. I mean, obviously, but September, that's not a sentence. But at least I've got all the information, the point, the idea on the page. So what I did was I went through every single scene, and you can see there's a lot of scenes. The column over to the left side of the screen is a list of each document. Each document is a different scene. And so I would go through each scene and just make sure that there was nothing that I had planned in the outline that had not been actually written as the roughest, worstest. Let me see if I can find some really bad stuff. Yeah, like here, 3 years passed. Time, historical events, art events. Okay, obviously that needs some work. Um, just like I tried to forget about them living their life. I didn't read the paper. Stuff like that. This is not a good flow. It's just I was just getting the ideas on the page. Um, so that took a couple of weeks, actually. I mean, as you can see, there's a lot of these scenes. Every one of them has to be turned into text. So then what I did was, having gotten everything roughly, terribly into the text, I then had to go through the outline and make sure that it wasn't, that there was nothing in the outline that was something I needed to write into the text. I wanted to clean up the outline. So the outline was just a structural list of the events, or a structural, thematic ideas, stuff that wasn't actually going to be writing, but there was just reminders for me that I could glance at, and ideally it should just be a couple of sentences. So that's where the outline is now. In other words, he says, I've got this scene where he reads a magazine. He's a drifter in New York during the Depression, and he sees a magazine about New York, decides to go. So I just wrote, scenes of magazine, decides to write. That's all I need to know for the outline. And then a bunch of thematic ideas. This is sort of like if I was writing a paper on this, or if I was trying to explain to someone what the scene was because they didn't understand it, this would be the stuff. So I want this outline now to be very, very brief notes to myself, so that the real stuff of it is in the text. I'm going to take a moment to say some hellos and address some comments. Hi, Nishaj. Hello, Alex. Thank you so much. That is very kind. Alex says that heartfelt thank you for this channel. It's an amazing resource and incredibly kind, generous of me to share my advice and insight. I appreciate that. I hope it is. I mean, to tell you the truth, this is not a thoroughly prepared lesson. I'm really just trying to report from the front in these progress reports. All right. So now I've got the outline has been a workspace. It's been a place to try and ask questions and figure out things that aren't clear. Having done that, I need to make sure that the big goal is to make it so that the place I am working every day when I go to work, I'm going to open the document of the text, and I'm going to choose. Let's take a look at the text. So every day I'm going to do what I'm going to go in. That's sorry, that's the outline. That's not the text. All right. So what I've got is this list of scenes, and with each scene I go to it, and I put this little so far so good marker so that I could see where I am over on the left. And so good is a very relative term. And I just take the next scene and I say, okay, let me read through this, and whatever is not right, whatever is not the thing I eventually want to read, I have to start thinking, okay, how can I make this more like the thing I want to read? Make it more telling the story, getting the voice that I'm trying to do, getting the texture and the ideas. So from now on, ideally, I will only look at the book itself and say, I need to work on it piece by piece. You only work one paragraph at a time, one sentence at a time. So all I do is open and say, where am I? And then I say, what can I do to make that better? For instance, this starts with, he suggested I take a shower. That's old text from an earlier version. I'm going to have to change that. That's not where it starts. In fact, he's already fallen asleep. That's been the work for about 3 weeks. I was just going through the outline, making sure that the outline had been rough drafted, cleaning the outline so that it was not distracting and so that there was not something that, like, I don't want to finish the book and then look back at the outline and say, oh my God, I forgot to put that in. It's like packing or something. You want to make sure everything's in the suitcase. I made notes as I'm here, as I'm writing every day. I will have like I'll think like, oh, this is something that I think I can explain in the live stream. I can talk about. So I would just jot down a note to myself. Actually, I can show you here. So here, if you see, I made a folder called LS Notes, live stream notes, and each of the live streams that I've done, I've made a set of notes, so I just briefly gave myself a note because, like, one day I just ran into this thought: how easy it is to get muddy. Saying something over and over doesn't do it. And the example I realized that one of the main three characters is a painter. His name is Charlie, and he's immensely talented, and he's trying to break through to the new phase of modern art, which in the 1930s was not clear that in the 1950s it was going to be abstract expressionism. That's an undercurrent of my story. So I hadn't really explained what Charlie was trying to do. Just to say, like, I want to do the new art. It wasn't clear enough. And what I realized is what Charlie wanted to be, I found a phrase for it, which is he wants to be the American Picasso, the new Picasso. The most important figure in the first half of 20th century art was Pablo Picasso, a problematic person by every measure. However, in terms of artistic importance, he was simply overwhelming. But he only went so far in the history of art, and what the abstract expressionists did moved away from his forms of abstraction into a more extreme version, and that's a lot of what this book is about, actually. So I needed to have an idea that Charlie literally says, I want to be the new Picasso. I want to be the American Picasso. Now, he's probably not the only person in this, art scene who wanted that, but I need to make sure that it's clear. One of the ways that you make sure something is clear, I tend to have him say it over and over. I had this idea and it came up in various scenes. So frankly, he just kept on saying it. And that can work. But when I was reading through, I thought, this isn't, to me, it's not working, because I want a distinctive single moment when he first says this, when he first describes this concept. And I wanted that just as a storyteller. If you want some idea to become powerful, it's not a bad thing to try and get it into a distinctive turning point in the story. If you can meld an idea into a story moment, it tends to work better for the reader, instead of just having this guy blather on all the time about this. And what I realized is I had him talk about it 4 or 5 times. And while he might mention it 4 or 5 times, I wanted there to be one distinctive scene when he tells his friend this idea. So I had to choose the scene and say, where is the scene and how is it, when is it going to, it's going to be actually like a confession. In other words, he has to explain the reason that Charlie won't get married to Billy, who loves him and wants to marry him and actually could support him because she's wealthy. He doesn't want to do it until he has proved himself, until he has broken through, until he is the American Picasso. Now, this is not a realistic goal, actually, but but what I need to do is have a moment when Charlie explains why he's having a problem with his relationship, because he is refusing to marry Billy until he has broken through his artwork. So that's the sort of thing that I only I discovered that I hadn't found that one scene. Then I went through, I found the scene. Whenever it's in another scene, I tried to reduce it down to, it's like, we now know this. We know the goal. Like in It's a Wonderful Life, the movie, there is a certain point in which George Bailey talks about wanting to leave town and see the world. He will talk about that many times, but he'll never really describe it as intensely as he does in that first introductory scene of that idea. So I was looking for that kind of thing. The other thing I discovered was that I had, very often, I want to show things happen in slow, incremental steps. And so I'll structure a section of a story where you see like a couple breaking up. And there's like little bits and pieces over like 8 scenes. And what I realized when I went through it was that, in fact, that doesn't feel like slow incremental steps. It feels like sort of a boring repetition. What I wrote here, see if I can show you this. Yeah. Why couldn't I see this until now? I asked myself in capitals and bold. I've been working on this for a long time. How did I not notice that I had too many scenes doing the same thing? And I wrote that I think what I discovered is it's because I had this idea. I had a theory. Oh, like I love the idea of slow steps towards a thing, that would be like this inexorable tension. And I was so in the theory that I wasn't actually noticing that in the story it was not working. That I needed more distinctive single scenes, not 8 little steps. Why could I not describe it? I don't know. I just couldn't see it. I couldn't see it. So by going over the outline and then going over the text and thinking like, why does this not feel right? And the answer is, this doesn't feel right because the same thing has sort of been happening in the past 4 scenes. As I read through the text, I begin to say, I'll feel like I'm getting bored. I'm feeling like it's not working. I'm not caring about the characters. And then the question is, in a practical sense, why? Why? It's not that it's just bad. Bad is an irrelevant word. It's useless. The question is, what is about it? Repetitive. That was a thing I could do something about. Incremental, the idea of like teeny tiny, almost invisible steps. That was something I could do something about. Okay, so let me just quickly let's get to some comments, because you guys have been showing up. Hi Najo, good to see you. Threat of Nemesis, I don't believe I've met you yet. Hello. Just found your channel a couple of days ago and has already made me make more progress in 2 days than I've in many months. Yay! Yeah, I cannot thank you guys enough for telling me that this is not just arrogantly and narcissistically talking about myself. I'm really trying to talk about the work. I'm really trying to talk about the things I've learned in practical senses and hopefully pass them on to you. So it is immensely helpful to me when you tell me this. Thank you, Threat of Nemesis. Hello, Kirby Light and Donna Nelson. Sonia asks, have you decided yet whether to self-publish the book or look for a publisher when this novel is finished? No. What I have decided is to wait until it is done. I'll talk a bit about publishing now, and then I'll come back to it another time. Here's the thing. First of all, the choice between self-publishing or finding a publisher, you don't necessarily have a choice because the publishers may not want you. So I do like to keep the option of self-publishing open. But even within if I can find a publisher who wants me, there's two sort of paths there. One is a nice, big, famous publisher, of which there's now only about maybe three or four giant conglomerated companies, which have like 8 publishers within them. But in fact, the publishing business has been conglomerated down to only a few big publishers. For those big publishers, among their many books, they are only going to focus their marketing and other things on a few. So even if you are with a big publisher, if you're not a big book with a big publisher, you are still going to get essentially kind of neglected. You're going to need to do a lot yourself. And the question becomes, if you're going to do a lot yourself, if you're going to have to work on the publicity and the marketing and whatever yourself, why would you give them a large percentage of the income to when you're doing a lot of the work? And there are some good reasons. One, there's more prestige. You may get a certain amount of respect and attention from bookstores and critics and things like that, which you would not get as a self-published book. The other reason would be simply that there's mechanics which they will take care of. There's a lot to publishing. It's hard work. I'm not sure if I'm up to taking that on. If you don't get a big publisher, there are many, many small publishers. They may love your book, but they may have the same problem that self-publishing has, which is it is hard to get the attention of the few media slots where they review books or talk about books, publicize books. There's just not a lot of spaces for that, and there are too many books and too many publishers. So among the being published by others, there's the big publisher and the small publisher, all of whom they have the advantage of they take care of the mechanics of publishing, and they have far more experience and expertise. But they also take part of the money. And for me, actually, one of the biggest problems is it becomes their schedule. For instance, I'm old, and I'm not sure I want to wait a year after finishing the book to publish it. I could self-publish it faster. And very often publishers will take a long time to decide on it. And then when they have decided, they will take a long time before they release the book. They have seasons, they have their own schedules and plans. So I have friends who have published with big publishers and they've had to wait a year and a half to get their book out. I'm not sure how I feel about that. On the other hand, it's an awful lot of work to self-publish. I don't know. I'm going to think about it. But what I've decided is until I actually have the book, until I can show it to a publisher and see if they're even interested, there's no point in even thinking about that, really. Okay. Michael says, from Tom's POV, is Charlie selfish? Do you portray Tom as a sympathetic character? Okay, here's the situation. There's 3 people in this triangle. Tom, Charlie the painter, Billy the rich woman who works as a social worker, actually. Each one of them, I believe, is very sympathetic, hopefully, but also flawed, as one should be. Charlie is indeed selfish. He's also brilliant. He also truly does love Billy. So the answer is, do I portray him from Tom's point of view as selfish? Absolutely. Much of the story is about Tom learning slowly but surely during the course of the story why Charlie is actually lovable, why Billy loves him, but still feeling, I would be better for her. I love you more. And then towards the end, spoilers, sorry, but we are doing behind the scenes here. By the end, Tom actually recognizes that their love is right for each other, and that he wants to help them get together. It's very Casablanca-y in that sense. But each character, ideally, will be both sympathetic and flawed. Tom is kind of charming, but he's also trying to break up these couple and steal this woman's love. So not great. Anyway, how do you describe Tom's art? Actually, Charlie's art is, that's actually one of the things I've been enjoying, is learning. Charlie's art is going to be what is termed abstract expressionism, American art from the 1950s and 60s. And so I can describe it as I would describe the work of all these famous abstract expressionists. What I've decided is that the way to describe art is to describe picture by picture. During the course of the story, different things are painted, and by describing the specific work and its effect on the people, you tend to build a strong, once again, anything that you tell in a story, if it has a relation to the story, has a relation to the characters, if it means something, like when Tom first sees Charlie's abstract expressionist art, he thinks Charlie's lost his mind. Because if you, the first person to see a Jackson Pollock or a Mark Rothko or a Franz Klein, they're like, what is this? This isn't even a painting. So anyway. Ricky says, you could have other people tell him you're trying to be the American Picasso, jokingly or critically in a mean way, which just intensifies his determination. Antagonists are useful to pinpoint a character's strengths and weaknesses. Yes. More than that, I needed to find the phrase, the idea of the American Picasso, in order to know what I wanted to do. Whose mouth I put it into is the next step. The thing I was talking about was discovering that I needed to find the phrase. The other thing is, and I was going to talk about this in a while, I'm going to get to it now. The biggest issue I'm having is what you just said, Ricky, about you can have other people tell him. The biggest issue I am facing is that my mind, over the decades of training myself, learning how to write scripts, learning how to write cinematically, learning how to write words that would play in a scene with cameras and actors, has trained my brain. I mean, I believe that brains work this way. There's pathways, connections between parts of the brain that electricity passes through. The more that it passes through a certain connection, the stronger, the more that pathway becomes the go-to. Your brain just goes there automatically. My brain has been trained to think in terms of dialogue scenes. This novel, I've realized, can't have that much dialogue. It's supposed to be, for my taste, I mean, it could, but it's supposed to be a memoir written by Tom 30 years after the fact. He's in his 70s when he writes this. He's not going to remember lengthy, exact descriptions. Now, there are plenty of first-person stories written as retelling their own life in which people will write whole dialogue scenes. And I'll do some of those. But what I've recognized is that the kind of storytelling that this is more of someone telling you a story, like literally just directly talking to the reader, telling a story, sometimes summarizing a dialogue, sometimes quoting the dialogue, but mostly not quoting dialogue, mostly not writing dialogue the way many, many good fiction works do dialogue. I'm good at dialogue, and it's been really hard for me. A note I wrote after I got through these 3 weeks of outline work was dealing with the art of words, how it feels to be stepping away from the language of cinema. I spent decades getting my mind to say, how can I have somebody say this? How can I have someone say this to another person? In this novel, that actually isn't the best way often. And it's very, very hard to retrain my brain. So I have a note here. I spent a full day on 2 scenes. Let me show you some of these scenes. I spent a full day on this scene, which was a dialogue scene, as you can see. It's the first discussion between Tom and Charlie. And as you can see, I wrote dialogue. It's essentially a script. It's essentially a script with quotation marks and paragraphs. And I made the script better. The dialogue isn't bad, but it was something was feeling not right. And at the end of the day, it's like, I can't believe I spent a whole day making that better, but it's not working. And all of a sudden, I think I was actually watching a movie, and I recognized, I think, that what I was doing shouldn't be like this movie, that in fact, I need to rethink that scene and rewrite it as Tom summarizing, like right now, here. Let's see. So Charlie is saying, like, he's asking about, Tom is a thief. That's his job. Like he makes his way through the world by stealing. And so Charlie is asking Tom what it's like to be a thief, partly because there's a romance to the outlaw for Charlie and other, bourgeois people. But also partly he's trying to figure out who he's teaming up with, because he doesn't want to like team up with a murderer or like a violent thief. And I realized that what I have to do is rewrite this scene and say, like, Charlie was trying to feel me out. Charlie was asking me about what it's like to be a thief. And I was doing my best to avoid the time, like something like that, which doesn't quote the dialogue, but explains the tension of the situation. It's just a different kind of storytelling. But it's not instinctive to me anymore. It has been so many decades, literally decades, that I've been working on how do I make this scene something that I can put into dialogue. And so it is going to be a real struggle for me. Like in this case, I have to go back and rewrite that scene. Like I left it that next day. I didn't want to go back and rewrite it the next day. So I just made a note to myself, like, I have to go back and rewrite that scene to limit the amount of dialogue to a few key exchanges and summarize the rest of it. There's something about the type of tension that I need to describe, which is interpreted by Tom, the narrator, instead of letting us see the tension by the way people behave, which is how you do in screenplays. In this case, Tom has opinions, Tom has memories, and I need to put those in instead of having us read it and get the memories, because that's weirdly, it's weird for a screenwriter, but sometimes that is the better form of storytelling for certain projects. Anyway, hello, Wolf Powers. You're talking on publishing yourself. Amazon KDP lets you have your own print and makes things pretty easy these days. Lots of tools for new publishers. Yes, yeah, no, I do know that. You can hire editors, but with modern tech, you can put the text into a TTS reader and let it read back to you and find errors. All kinds of things you can do yourself with free-to-use tech. Yes, absolutely. I have no doubt that it is within my ability to self-publish a book. The question is, sometimes if you DIY something, you have the power of DIY, the authenticity of it, but you also have the limits of a person who does not know the art well, does not know the business well. Tricky. I am definitely keeping my mind open to both possibilities. Hi, Nathan. Do you write scenes in order or jump around? Oops, my mistake. Let's see. Trying to keep a record of the questions. Usually, I jump around. But now, in order to, like, what I'm going to do is march through it in order. But I'm not holding in a place until I get it right. What I'm doing is I'm marching through it and doing the best I can on a day's work. like that scene I just told you, I definitely improved it. The play of the scene and the dialogue is better, but I still need to go back and remove, like, summarize much of the dialogue. In some of the scenes, like here, I just let's show you. Like here, I have a scene where Charlie paints paintings all night, and Tom is watching him paint for the first time. So I've got some things here that are like Charlie is talking about painting. So I've got a series of ideas which I put into a paragraph here. This is not. I mean, this has to be turned into Charlie saying these things, or Tom summarizing Charlie saying these things. At the moment, I just got the words down. And then, so like here, he asked me about my life as a way to figure out what to paint next. His landscape. He asked me to tell him about things I had seen. I talked about boxcars and hobo camps. I'm going to have to expand that a great deal and clear this up a little. But this, I talked about boxcars and hobo camps. I need to write a full paragraph in which I capture bits and pieces of Tom's experience as a drifter through America during the Depression, leading up to this part that we've got here, to get flavor and texture in. I haven't done that yet, but I got as far as I could with this one day's work on this scene, and now I'm moving ahead. Then I'm going to go back. The next time I go, I'll have this partly sketched in, and I'll start again, and I'll do more. So I am both, I am not jumping around, but I'm also not refusing to move ahead until I've got it perfect. I'm just doing a little better, moving ahead, and then I'll start again, and then maybe I'll jump around, who knows. Right now, I need to go through and really get at least something improved in every scene marching through in order. Okay. Charles Dickens was in his own lifetime a successful writer, yet his publisher, who had profited from Dickens' work, refused to publish his manuscript, A Christmas Carol. So Dickens self-published. I did not know that. That's fascinating. Like I said, I am very, very open to both possibilities. There's at this point, it used to be that like when I was learning to be a writer in high school and college, self-publishing was a joke. It was a vanity. It was pathetic. That's no longer true. It's actually can be quite exciting and cool. So I have to consider, what I have to consider is the expenditure of my time and effort. Like if I spend a lot of time working on the publishing and releasing, the marketing and the hustling of this book, I don't know that I can write another book. So that's the thing. What I'm discovering is this writing novels thing is hard work. It takes hours a day. Yesterday I did a really good day. I did about 5 hours. Most days I don't get that much in. At that speed, it's still going to take me at least the rest of this year just to get a readable draft. And I'm not done yet. And that's if I work really hard, putting aside other things. I don't know. I will see. Somerset Maugham does a great job with minimal dialogue, but telling the story. Yes, there's a whole novelistic tradition, and I'm trying to read stories like that. E.L. Doctorow, who I've mentioned, Paul Auster. There's a lot of good novelists who write stories that are very much a storytelling voice. Joseph Conrad. Anyway, Nishaj says, dialogue is the hardest thing for me with my script I'm writing. Trying to stay true to who the characters are and also making sure the clues and story is still moving and flowing with the tension and the growth of the story at the same time. Yes, everyone has different things they feel natural, but mainly it's practice. The thing I'm talking about here is that for me, I had a natural talent at dialogue writing, but what I also had was 30 years of daily practice writing dialogue. writing scripts, finishing them, see what plays and what doesn't, having people read them out loud and learning about how kind of dialogue works and doesn't. The problem for me now is not using the style that I had trained myself to use and try to find a different style for this project. Thanks, Doreen. Hi. Threat of Nemesis. Any advice on writing dialogue for a constant carousel of 8 characters interacting with the main character, getting progressively more hostile for a psychological short horror film? I would definitely say look at my couple of my videos about that, because what I've talked about really is certainly there's one I just wrote about dialogue. that's it, but also dramatic action. That one is what underpins the dialogue. And the other thing about writing for like a set of characters is what I call building character arcs. I will put links to those 3 videos in the description after this video is, when I'm not doing it live. I would urge you to look at those, Threat of Nemesis, because those are where I really talk mostly about that stuff. But the key is to, and there's also, I believe, there should be I'll try and find it. There's another live stream, which I will put a link to below, where I talk about giving characters a distinctive voice. In other words, if you have 8 characters who are getting progressively hostile, the important thing is that they be individuals, that they each have their own reason and way of getting progressively hostile. So I will put links to all of those things down in the bottom, in the description when I'm done. There is another writer's hat you may need to learn how to wear if you self-publish, which is copywriting. I spent some time studying sales writing and applied them to blurb writing. Whatever my book project is, I write a blurb, which is a sales pitch to the audience. Absolutely. That's the thing. There's publishing and then there's marketing. Publishing and marketing are interrelated. And in order to self-publish, you need to do both. Yes, Michael asks, does Charlie reveal to Tom how he really feels about love? Absolutely. That is a major development in the story. Yes. To get a handle on a blurb from my novel, I ran a detailed synopsis through an AI analysis and was impressed at the result. I may try that. I don't know. I'm not the biggest fan. I don't even like before AI, there were marketing specialists. And so it's the equivalent. If you give your story to a marketing specialist and say, can you tell me how you would blurb this? They're essentially running it through their library of experiences. And then they tell you, almost always when somebody gives me that thing, it feels like it's not what I would do. That is a problem of mine, I admit. I would ideally DIY everything. I just have to think about whether that's realistic. On the other hand, it may be more pleasurable and like, what the heck? Okay. Hi, Lucy Milo. Just wanted to say how much, thank you so much. I'm so glad Lucy appreciates these lives. If your sales blurb is well done and your keywords are good, you may not have to hustle much. You could get right to work on your next project. In theory, what I've read and heard and experienced from doing this is if you want something to sell, you need to market it personally and aggressively for months and months. Okay. Donna says, as this is a decades-long passion project, are you enjoying the moment-by-moment process? Yes, this is a great question. Are you feeling the sense of satisfaction of being an author in flow? And the answer is absolutely. That is the one thing. Like I said, like today, I didn't get any writing done. I was preparing for this and stuff, and it's so easy for me to not do it, to find some excuse not to do it. Yesterday, I spent 4 or 5 hours. I kept pushing myself. When I got a little bit done, I would take a little break and then push myself to go back and do another paragraph. But the answer is the other day, about a week ago, I was trying to get myself through it, and I opened up a scene, and there was that scene I was talking about where he finds a magazine. He's traveling in the South because it's winter and he wants to be warm, and he finds a magazine in the trash of a hotel. And the magazine is talking about New York, and it makes him want to go to New York. I wrote a rough draft of that paragraph a long time, but then I went through it, and I just spent an hour going through that and getting the sentences into a better order and finding the language of them. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, going to New York. Okay. Yeah, so these paragraphs, it had been almost 5 years since I had set out on the road. I was 19 years old. In my own estimation, I had done well for myself. I was not bitter, starved, blind from rot gut, or dead. Like that paragraph, that was work. Like I had to think like I had to imagine his feelings and this idea of him thinking pretty highly of himself before he went to New York. And then I thought, I tried just throwing down words, and I thought I was not bitter. I was not starved. And then I had to form this sentence. I was not bitter, starved, blind from rot gut, or dead. There's a rhythm to that. Bitter, starved, blind from rot gut. Da, 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 da. And the idea that these are things he has seen other people have and that he's young and not had them. So like that was a lot of work. It was absolutely fabulous. I talked to another friend of mine who's in a similar situation, a screenwriter, a TV writer who's writing novels. And I was like, all I got done was one paragraph today, but it felt right. It's like, if I can just do that, if I can just keep doing that, that'll work. Because like these two paragraphs, they flow. It starts with where he is when he reads this magazine, which I have not yet described because I'm going to have to go through some old magazines, some old New Yorker magazines to describe what I'm seeing. But then, here, I'm going to read it. It had been almost 5 years since you can't see what I'm saying. All right, here we go. Okay, so in the winter of 1936, I found a magazine in the trash bins behind a hotel in Galveston, Texas. It was called The New Yorker, and this is the part I have to go back. I was like, I don't have time now to go look at a 1936 New Yorker and try and describe it in Tom's terms. But then I did have this. It had been almost 5 years since I set out on the road. I was 19 years old. In my own estimation, I had done well for myself. I was not bitter, starved, blind from rot gut, or dead. I was, in truth, pretty cocky, and I got a notion to test my mettle against the big time. I made up my mind to wait for the thaw and then make my way to the city of New York. Okay, the language there, the language there is a little formal. This is a guy who's conscious of writing his own story. So that's what I was looking for, was how to have that sort of self-narrating voice. And at the same time, to set the feeling of this turning point in his life. This is early on. This is just like 10 pages into the story. But going to New York is going to be important. That's the start of the story, really. So I wanted to put that down at the end, like this is where we are headed. It's good. The curtain's going to open to the next act. So trying to like summarize why he wanted to go, and what I wanted to get to was, I was in truth pretty cocky. In other words, that he's this drifter, thief, self-made kid who decides to go to New York because there's a certain sense of ambition, of aspiration, of wanting better things. And to find the words for that, it took a while. It took about an hour to do these two paragraphs. Okay, so that's the kind of thing that during that hour, I was in heaven, because I was like, what am I going to do? Well, I throw down phrases. I try and think, how does he feel about himself? You just sort of like ask yourself questions and write down the answer. And then you look at that and then you think, what kind of phrase does that need? Like, I was in truth pretty cocky. Like I said, I'm trying to learn his voice. And different scenes, like right now, he's kind of like got a storyteller voice. Later, when he's describing the pictures, he's going to have a different language. So, like, here's a description of Charlie's paintings. He had painted 2 more pictures. They were lined up near the windows, perhaps so the light and air would dry the paint faster. Next to the self-portrait was a still life. The apples and the half the loaf of bread. Earlier we talked about Charlie buying these apples and bread. Were set out on a rumpled dish towel. Alongside them, he had laid a butter knife and 2. So this is just a paragraph describing a painting, but then it gets into describing the effect of the painting on the character. And he starts to talk about the dull silver gleam of the knife contrasted with the mottled wood of the brushes. And I'm trying to make you see and feel the texture of the painting, and just everything I could do to describe the passion of a person who is learning to fall in love with painting, which is what the character is going through at the moment. So to answer Donna's question, are you feeling that sense of satisfaction being an author in flow? The answer is yes. That is why you do it. that is the thing. And I do want to talk briefly about this concept, which is the good thing for me here is while I am struggling, as I always have in writing, to not become self-conscious or feel it's not right or not know the process. The thing is, I have done it so much that I can I trust that if I just follow the steps, which I've been telling you guys, it's actually helping me. Having spent the past 3 years trying to explain how to overcome your self-doubt or your feeling that it's not enough or your whatever it is that those feelings, they only go away if you write the words on the page and then work on the words. That's the only solution I can find. Having told that to you, because I had the experience in the past, helps me when I sit down to do this. I don't feel terrified. I feel struggle. I feel frustrated. I feel doubt sometimes. But the one thing I know is that in the past, when I wrote a novel back in the 1980s, which is where I learned a lot of this stuff, I was terrified. I was in a panic all the time. And I had to learn to enjoy paragraph by paragraph. I had to learn to enjoy the process. Now I can trust that. And so that's why I'm actually doing these live streams, to try and pass on to you, even having had professional success as a screenwriter and even having learned that I know how to write, I still feel doubt and procrastination and frustration when I sit down to write. But if I just focus on the page, on the words, the process kicks in, the art kicks in, and the art is a pleasure no matter what. Even if you never finish your novel, the art will still be a pleasure while you're doing it. So that's what I've been trying to pass on in these. Okay. Hi, She Breathes in Gold. Nice to see you. Michael asks, does Charlie have self-destructive tendencies like most artists? Absolutely. They are. He never finishes. He's always distracted by the next idea. And so he'll do one painting, but then change to a different style as he's exploring. And that's part of the story is that he does in fact self-destruct. Doreen, I just came from a pitch contest that was on YouTube, and one of the runners-up was done by AI, and the chat could tell. AI is like a thesaurus. Use it, but don't let it replace your brain. Excuse me. Yes, absolutely. The problem for me is, and this is like a problem for me even with collaborating with humans, I want it to be my words. I just do. Even if I'm writing with a person I respect and love, I have to like make a big effort to not say, no, I would write it this way, or I want to write it myself. I'm a terrible collaborator. So AI doesn't help because I just think I would rather do it my way. And then, I'm not saying that as it's a good thing. Hello, Lake Filter. Miguel. Hi, Miguel. Miguel says, just passing by, but can't stay for long today. Just wanted to thank you for answering my question. Miguel sent me an email about multiple perspectives, rooting for you to have fun and go wild with your prose. Yes. Oh, that's the other thing I wanted to talk about. Just before we go, I wanted to say the other thing I'm learning is this is going to layer. Like the experience of writing this is kind of like layering. In the sense that right now I'm trying to get the story. I am just trying to tell the story. I'm trying to tell it basically in language, but the main thing is I'm trying to get like, in this scene, this happens. He sees two paintings. In this scene, he watches them have a fight. Whatever it is, there's a scene there, and I need to get that knocked down to basic words. Excuse me, allergies. I'm trying not to sneeze as we talk. Later, when I know that each scene is basically right, I want to go back and just deal with language, just deal with doing research to get more words that I don't have yet, like looking at the New Yorker and describing it, and also just getting the rhythm and the flair of the voice. Now and then I get it, like that paragraph I showed you. Other times I'm just clunking down stuff that's like, okay, at least I'm getting the event clearly narrated. And I know that I'll come back to it. And the thing I thought was, in a way, if I do think cinematically, essentially, right now I'm just trying to get the script done. I'm just trying to get each scene to do its job and to allow the characters to have their action and to have a point and an emotion. And then I'm going to go back and I'm going to shoot it. In this case, shooting it will be language. Instead of performance, instead of production design, instead of camera work, it's going to be words. And I'm going to do a couple of drafts where I'm shooting this by just picturing, like I have in these few paragraphs I've showed you, because so many of the paragraphs I have now, they aren't there yet. But I'm okay to know that once I've got the script done, I will shoot the novel. I've spent so many years doing cinema, I can't help but think that way. Okay. Ricky says, my brain has just spent 3 years writing a 70,000 word novel, and asking to find the words to sell it in one paragraph is torture. Yes, summarizing, marketing, it's a different mindset. It's a different art. The good thing is, for me as a screenwriter, I have had to learn how to simplify and summarize, because in order to communicate with the people you're working with as a screenwriter, you have to be able to say, it's a love story about a triangle set among with a thief who's living among painters in New York in the 1930s. At least I've like clicked in enough pieces there. It's a skill you have to practice. Jean says, you will make your way, Glenn. I'm positive. The self-narrating voice. Take a look at Edgar Allan Poe. He influenced Dostoevsky. Absolutely. It's interesting because I just started rereading Great Expectations, which is beautifully self-narrated. But yes, this writer would have read those books. Because one of the things is I've got a character who knows he's writing his memoir, so he's influenced by different kinds of writing, and he's writing in the 1970s, so he's got some later work in his head too. But anyway, yes, thank you. I'm going to leave on that fabulously encouraging thought. I appreciate all of you telling me, first of all, that you feel that these live streams are helpful. And second of all, just telling me that you think that what I'm on the path to is good. That helps me a lot. I hope this helps you a lot, because you get to watch the struggle as it goes on. And I will do more of these. Until then, until next week, go write something.